Ready to go, Hannah? Kind of. Yeah. Call the meeting to order. It's almost 7 on the dot. This is the regular Planning Commission meeting of April 10th to 2023. And Hannah, would you take roll?
I'd be happy to. Commissioners present and establishing a quorum, Commissioners Blair, Bull, Dawkins, Lewis, Lockhart, Nugent, and Walker.
Thanks very much. Let's see if I have my notes here. Do you see at this time we have time set aside for public comments limited to 3 minutes? Any subject not on the agenda? See anyone in the waiting room?
We have one person in the waiting room. If you'd like to submit public comment, feel free to raise your hand and I can give you the power to speak. Nope.
Thanks, Hannah. Next item up is approval of minutes from our last meeting, March 27th. Any edits, comments? Oh, Melanie.
I'm just going to move that we approve the minutes from our, sorry, I have the date right in front of me. It's March 27th, 2023 meeting.
Thank you. Jake seconded the motion. Commissioners in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Next item up is new business, and this is the North Kelsey update that I think some commissioners had requested details on. So glad to have you, Deborah.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Do you need a screen share?
I can. Hannah and I didn't coordinate in advance. So Hannah, is that going to work for you if I go ahead and screen share?
That would work great for me.
Okay. She says, I'm not prepared to share. Let's try this again. So can everybody see that? Okay. I feel like I need to close everything else I've got open right now. There we go. Oh. Does that work for everybody?
Great.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much. And feel free during this presentation to stop me at any time. I put together a history of the North Kelsey site, and I moved to the area in 1995. So some things had happened prior to 1995, and from kind of 1995 till I joined the city in 2017, I did the best I could to gather that information together, but there may be others, Mayor Thomas or members of the commission, who have more of this history than I do. So I am open to receiving, any input or feedback that commissioners or others have as we go through this PowerPoint presentation today. So the interest I understand from the Planning Commission was just getting some background on the North Kelsey site. So we're going to go through some history. We're going to talk a little bit about the planning process that the city went through kind of in the early 2000s, and then kind of what's happened since the recession ended in 2015 and kind of where are we headed from here. So that's an overview of the presentation this evening. So the site that we're talking about is the one that's on the screen. These are the properties that the city owns. They're about 12, 13 acres total, so approximately in there. And you can see Lowe's is to the north of the site, and then Walmart even further to the north of that. So just to give you an orientation, north is straight up in this photo. So I just was fascinated when I found this picture of this historical picture of Monroe. This is actually from the 1940s. And I didn't realize before doing this research that the city of Monroe has actually been acquiring parcels in the North Kelsey site going back almost 100 years. So the first acquisition was in 1925 of all things, and it was 80 acres. And the city purchased that from the state of Washington for $1,100. So it seems like a bargain to us today, particularly, I think, given the history of the site overall. Just to get you oriented a little bit, that road that you see that is to the south of the site, that's actually Main Street. So US 2 wasn't even in existence at that time. And of course, you can see, what now is Highway 203 heading to the north. And then what you're looking at is basically a hillside. And the North Kelsey site is actually built underneath that hillside. So over time, there was a gravel mining operation, and it's my understanding that that gravel mining operation cleared the site and made it flat as it is today. So without that gravel mining operation that the city negotiated, we wouldn't have the space that we have for the box retail that's there today. And we wouldn't be talking about the type of development I think that we're interested in the long term. So there was a couple of things that happened between 1925 and 1974. So between kind of that 50-year period, the city continued to acquire properties around the North Kelsey site. And then there was a lull between 74 and 92. And in 1992, the city hired a couple of planning consultants to do a feasibility study. And I think what was most important about the outcome of that study was really two things. First was that the study recommended connecting North Kelsey Street and Chain Lake Road and US 2. So the roadway alignment that we have out there today was a result of that 1992 study and recommendation. And the second thing that was of interest to me was that the preferred mix of uses was commercial and industrial. And that's very similar to the mix of uses that are out there today. We've got general commercial with box retail and smaller shops. And then, of course, there's still Lakeside Industries operating an asphalt plant behind the Galaxy Theater and adjacent to Walmart. So we still have that mix of commercial and industrial uses out there on the site. In 2001, the city hired makers. So 10 years after that initial study almost, the city hired makers architects and urban design and started kind of a more intense planning process. And in 2003, the North Kelsey Development Plan was approved by the City Council. And you can see that site with the, somewhat of that roadway alignment, that first road that was recommended in 1992 goes through that site connecting US 2, Kelsey, and Chain Lake Road together. So that was kind of the aggregate site. In 2005, the city purchased 23 acres from Snohomish County. Snohomish County had a public works shop yard there, and that gave the city then 69 acres total to begin planning in a more intense way. The initial plan, and I have a couple of shots from that initial plan, it was intended to be what now is called kind of a lifestyle center. So if you've been out to the city of Snohomish and visited I think it's Snohomish Station, where you have the Kohl's and the, is it a Fred Meyer that's out there? I'm trying to remember if it's Fred Meyer, and then Home Depot. That's similar to what the city had originally envisioned, was to have kind of that mix of box retail, office space, and smaller shops to go along with it. I think the key piece of the original vision was what was called the Village Green. And in the next slide, I have a picture, I think, that shows how that Village Green was actually laid out at that time. So that was the original vision. What we have out there today, of course, everybody is familiar with. It's the Fred Meyer sites, the Galaxy 12 movie theater, Lowe's, Walmart, and then the Providence Medical Center. So although what has been developed wasn't exactly to plan, what is out there right now, I think, provides a pretty good mix of retail and entertainment and services. So as you're thinking about what North Kelsey site could be and what the city ought to do with its remaining 12 acres, just keep in mind that what we have out there now is, I think, a pretty good mix, and it generates significant retail sales for the city. So there are other communities up and down the Sky Valley that wish they had the mix that we have. We're clearly a regional shopping destination, so we get a lot of business that comes from outside the city limits and comes in and spends their money in Monroe, and that allows the city to offer a lot of services that it otherwise wouldn't be able to afford. So any questions before we move on to the next slide and dive in a little deeper into the North Kelsey development plan?
I see Melanie's hand.
Kind of, I mean, it ties in. Do you know what year Highway 2 was built?
Not off the top of my head, and I don't know if anybody else has that. When did they? It would be the bypass is what was built, because US 2 actually came through and connected Snohomish. So Snohomish's current Main Street and Monroe's current Main Street was that Highway 2 connection, and they moved the highway, further to the north to bypass the downtown because they had traffic problems at the time. That was my understanding. And I don't know if there's anybody else in the meeting who might have more of a history than that.
It's not super duper important for the discussion. I was just curious since the slide started where it didn't exist and then it existed next in the timeline. So it's just pure curiosity.
Yeah, I'll look it up because I'm also curious now. So thank you for asking the question. All right, so the next couple of slides, we're going to be talking about the planning process for North Kelsey. And again, I think starting with the community's interest in how North Kelsey should be developed. And what I thought was most interesting about the goals and objectives that were outlined in that 2003 plan is that it's not that far from what I think we currently hope will happen on the North Kelsey site. So number one was increasing the city's economic vitality. And I think if you take a look at what's out there now, that site currently does that. So again, the city owns the land that Fred Meyer sits on and the Galaxy movie theater, Walmart, Lowe's, all of those things have clearly increased the city's economic vitality. Number two was creating a focal point as a community gathering spot. And this goal clearly has not been met. We do have one of the parcels, and I'll point that out when we take a look at the map, that is set aside as a park, but it certainly is not sized to accommodate at least, when it says at least, it should be at least 1,000 people for community events. So that desire to have a gathering place, kind of a festival lot, that still is on the city's list of things that we would like to accomplish. But it doesn't seem like there would be space potentially to have that happen on the North Kelsey sites and accommodate the other goals and objectives that are outlined. So number three was providing for uses and services that meet the needs of Monroe's diverse population. And I think this was really intended as the idea to cite the YMCA on this site. So something similar to a YMCA. The city at the time was still trying to find a spot for a community center. And so people looked at this site as offering that opportunity. Number four was creating a strong identity for the development. And that was encouraging design that combines both traditional and modern elements. And I think that this is still something that the city would like to accomplish on this site, is having that nice mix of look and feel, something that feels like Monroe, but offers, I think, a more contemporary design. Number five is encouraging pedestrian-friendly development. And I think that would still be the case today. We would still hope that we have good trails and good pedestrian connections and offer different ways of moving about the community. When I've been out on the North Kelsey side, I've been really surprised, I guess I shouldn't be, by the number of residents that come down off of the path on Chain Lake Road and actually walk all the way down, into that retail center and then walk back up that hill again. So I think it still is used. I think that pedestrian friendly capacity still exists on the site and is even present today. And then finally, number 6, creating a place that complements but does not reproduce the aesthetics of the downtown. So I think the idea here was there was a concern at the time when this plan was being put together that it would hollow out the downtown. And we have continued, I think, to invest and try and encourage business recruitment and retention into the downtown. I don't think that the two spaces compete with one another necessarily. I think they have attract a different type of business into each one of those locations. But certainly that's something I think that we need to continue to be mindful of and consider as we move forward with future development. So any questions or any additional information that anybody might have about the 2003 North Kelsey Development Plan, the goals and objectives? Nope. All right. We'll go on to the next one. So here are a couple of shots of how makers and the city and community kind of went through the process of creating the development plan and the framework that I think we're still operating under today. So you can see number 2 were the alternatives evaluation. So the various alignments, roadway alignments, and where buildings would go into the future. And you can see photos of community meetings that took place where the city and the consultant team was asking for feedback. And then number 3 on the right, the concepts for refinement and implementation. And I think what's interesting about this is that you can see then the bones of the current North Kelsey site as it is today. Now, certainly the buildings are in different locations and the parking lots are different, but the roadway system is still there. And the way that the site is laid out is similar to what was initially envisioned going back to 2003. So did anybody on the Planning Commission take part in any of these community meetings at the time back in 2003? I know I lived in the community, although I was working for Woodinville at the time, so I didn't participate in this process. Nope, nobody has any historical information. I know the mayor's on the call today, and I know he participated or was a part of the community at the time. All right, so where are we at then with the North Kelsey timeline? After the City Council adopted the development plan in 2003, the city began marketing the property. And in 2006, recorded then the Declaration of Covenants, or the CCNRs. And it's really the CCNRs at this point that are driving redevelopment of the site. And I'll get into details on the CCNRs. But the recording of those CCNRs happened in 2006. And it was happening at the same time that the city was negotiating with Lowe's to purchase the property that Lowe's currently sits on. And it's my understanding, and talking to staff members who were here at the time, that the understanding was that the property was going to be developed under that North Kelsey development plan. So we had a team in place that was preparing to, build out the rest of the development and to work to lease out the property. And the first piece of that entire puzzle was negotiating for the purchase and sale of the property to Lowe's. And the Great Recession unfortunately happened in December of 2007, and Lowe's started construction and opened in 2008. And everything else got put on hold for an extended period of time, waiting for the recession to come to an end. I hadn't really realized until I put this timeline together that the city actually did a pretty good job at marketing and selling the properties even during the recession. So in 2010, the city had to finance the purchase of the property, the entire, acreage that we bought with $11 million in bonds. And we needed that money in order to pay off the bank loan. In 2013, the city sold a piece of property to the Providence Medical Center and it opened. In 2014, Walmart opened. And then in 2015, the Great Recession came to an end. We did sell off one piece in 2020 to the small medical professional building that's on the corner just adjacent to Providence Medical Center. We did go in and refinance the loans in 2012 and 2015. And then we were able to retire that debt in 2020, kind of leaving us where we are today with 12 acres remaining on the site. And I'm going to go into then next what we've been doing to work with Lowe's to amend the CCNRs. So any questions about the timeline, or anybody have any different recollections of how the North Kelsey sales unfolded during the Great Recession?
Deborah, I just have a question. So purchased in 2003 with a bank loan, and then refinanced that with bonds. Why didn't the city retain, if you went to all the trouble to keep up with the financing and make all the loan payments, why didn't the city retain the ownership of the land and just lease it to Lowe's or Providence or any of the other companies that wanted to site their buildings on that land?
Why did the city sell instead of lease?
Yeah, I'm just curious why they sold it rather than, retain the ownership of the land and lease the land to the companies that wanted to build their buildings on it.
I don't know the answer to that. I know that we did lease the Galaxy Theater property to Galaxy Theater, and it's my understanding that there were challenges in being a landlord. And so I think that it was the intent at the time that the city wasn't going to be in the business of being a property owner, that it needed to sell those properties and divest itself and pay off its loans. I see the mayor has his hand up, Chair.
Okay, Jeff?
Thank you. So Administrator Knight is right. The city had Galaxy Theater. We were having issues related to just having the lease there. We've had other properties also that were sort of under lease where we've made adjustments as well. Being a property owner puts us in a awkward position of people, of businesses coming to us and asking us to reduce the lease on the property, the cost of the lease on the property and things like that. And when you come approach a political body like that, that's not one of our core competencies. Core functions as local government to lease out property. So that's something that we never set off with the idea that we'd be leasing property at North Kelsey, just because of the experience that we had with other entities as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just thinking, very complicated being a landlord, but maybe it avoids, the really restrictive CCNRs that Lowe's has on that.
And to be clear there on the CCNRs, I think the council at the time and the mayor were concerned about how they were going to be making, how they were going to be paying for the loan that they had on the land. And there was a disagreement between Lowe's and First Western. And First Western wasn't interested in the CCNRs and still was working to negotiate this three-party agreement with the CCNRs. And when it came down to it, a decision was made by the majority of the council to sell to Lowe's and not make those final adjustments to the CCNRs, which kind of informs where we are today. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So good lead in to what do the CCNRs actually say? And I wanted to note that the city recorded a short plat in 2012 and reconfigured the parcels. So the highlighted section that you see from the actual CCNRs references parcels 2 and 3 of tract 2, but now those are lots or parcels 4, 5, 6, and 7. And I have a map that shows kind of where those are located on the property. But when individuals report that only retail can be built on those parcels, what the CCNRs actually say is development shall be limited to retail stores and will have no office, restaurant, or similar parking intensive uses. And that's a very unfortunate term because it doesn't define what a parking intensive use is. And so it leaves it open to the interpretation of the parties. And the way that our attorney has interpreted this is that anything except for a retail store requires amending the CCNRs. So that's the position that we're currently in today, is that those parcels can accommodate retail, but nothing else can be used on that site, including residential. So there was a question about, hey, can we put residential apartment buildings or any kind of other residential uses on those sites? And we cannot do that without amending these CCNRs at this time. So any questions? All right. So what is the current vision for this site? So Mayor Thomas and the City Council, starting in 2018, took a look at the North Kelsey site and realized that the recession really fundamentally changed retail, and that it probably wasn't going to be possible going forward to create the lifestyle center that was initially envisioned, only because retailers were really trying to discern what does the future of retail look like. So the vision that was adopted was for mixed use development. And that can either be, kind of a vertical mixed use where you have, the retail on the bottom floors and the residential above that or office above that, or what's called horizontal mixed use, which is what you see, for example, around the Redmond Town Center, where they have built multi-unit housing adjacent to the Redmond Town Center. And it's that multi-unit housing then that is now driving uses inside the Redmond Town Center. It used to be Redmond Town Center had anchor stores like Macy's and REI. Those have gone. And now what you find there are more service-oriented and family-oriented businesses that are there currently at Redmond Town Center. So mixed-use development could be ground floor retail or restaurant space, 5-story structures. And we'll come back to that because the developers that are most interested in building multi-unit housing on the North Kelsey sites have asked whether or not that height limit can be raised. So they'd like to see taller buildings on the site, taller than 5 stories. And then the idea would be that those residences inside those multi-unit, that multi-unit housing would complement and drive business then to their surrounding retail. And then finally, keeping it pedestrian friendly, which is again consistent with the 2003 goals and objectives from the North Kelsey Development Plan. So any questions about the current vision for the site? And what you see here is a rendering from Makers, the same company or consulting firm that had put together the original vision, came back and did some additional work for design as part of marketing the sites for us.
Deborah, Brandy has a question.
So first question is, I see a discrepancy this whole time between what this vision is and what the CCNR allows. So that's one question, comment. And then the second is these drawings and stuff, renderings, once it's sold, it doesn't have to look like this. So unless we have really strict either, what is it, the design standards or things like that in it. So by releasing the property and selling it, it seems also that we're looking at something that's probably not going to be what it looks like at the end. I guess that's just a comment. And how do we go about getting from the visions this whole time with the CCNR the way it is? Even if we tried to change zoning, we would still be waiting until that gets fixed, right? Because-
Yes, yeah, it's absolutely right. The first step is to amend the CCNRs. And so that is something that the city has been working with our attorney and Lowe's. We've been working with Lowe's to try and amend those CCNRs. So that's step one. And I think you're correct about step two, which is if you want a project to look a particular way, you have to have pretty rigorous design guidelines, or you have to enter into a development agreement with the purchaser in order to define exactly what it is that you want to get out of the project at the end.
Mayor Thomas?
I'm going to add to that also, in addition to the CCNRs and having those agreements in place, it's critical that the people in positions of being able to make final decisions. So I'm thinking in particular of your mayor and your council members are committed at the time that decisions are being made to the vision that is before you. So when you take a look at this process, 2003 and then 2006, 2008, some of those milestone dates, there was a vision before to have something similar to Redmond Town Center. And I was part of forming that. When Lowe's came in, there was a compromise on that vision. And so for each of you as planning commissioners, I just want to underscore how important it is that we all realize that these things can take years, if not decades, to realize. And it's important that you're sharing how important that vision is with your with your elected leadership, or if you become elected leadership, to continue to explain that, because otherwise, exactly what you just brought up, Commissioner, even if the CCNRs are there, they can be modified in the future. So just some things to think about. And I appreciate the time to say a few words. Thank you.
That's a great segue, Mayor, too, because oftentimes when we're talking about the North Kelsey site, I remind people that it took Woodinville almost 30 years to get to the vision that they have now for their downtown. I was a part of that original planning process and their first comprehensive plan in 1992. And what you see in their downtown now was what we envisioned in 1992, but they had to wait 30 years in order for it to happen. The same thing is true for the Totem Lake development in Kirkland on 405. That development almost happened several times. There was the .com bust that killed it off once, and then there was the Great Recession that put it on pause. And what they have there today is actually significantly better than what they had originally planned for, back in the early 2000s. So when you have a community vision, sometimes it takes a very long time for that vision to actually materialize. And you have to be patient in order for it to happen. And you have to wait sometimes longer than you hope for in order to get what you want.
Thanks, Deborah. Kelsey?
I was just curious on how the conversation going with the lawyers. Is there like any end in sight on the CCNRs, or do we have a timeline on that?
I do have a slide talking about that timeline. So can you be patient and I'll talk a little bit more about where we are at with the CCNRs.
Randy?
I wanted to comment because you did bring up some highlighted areas that we're probably familiar with. Woodinville, for instance, they have a poorly designed older area where they have retail shops that it's hard to drive around there. They're not pedestrian friendly. And then the new one that they just made is great, excellent. But that's a kind of what we don't want to do is accidentally design something that's with past ideas. We want to make sure we're looking forward to what people are going to be doing more in the future. And the village and that new thing in Woodinville are both what I think will continue to be for the future, because that's what big cities have. I mean, you have walkability to your restaurants everywhere you want to go and live. And then the other thing is the 2003 vision that they do have. I think those points are exactly what we keep still hearing from people that they want. And so I heard you say we might have to give up on a few of those points already, like the festival lot and something else that was in there. I can't remember right now, but I think that we should try to stick to the 2003 stuff. So comment, that's it.
Just to comment on the festival lot. I think she meant a 1,000-person festival lot in that space.
No, I know,
Okay.
but that's what they, in 2003, that's what they got it for. The extra 29 acres or whatever. So, and my point being that it sounds like the city's been continually buying areas down there for a reason. And if the last big purchase had that as part of the main goal, I don't think we should give up on it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry to jump back a few slides, but is the Galaxy Theater parcel still owned by the city?
No, we sold it during the recession.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
It's actually owned by a company called Beta Monroe, who also owns the retail center where Coastal Farm and Ranch is.
Wow.
Deborah, I had some old notes from January 2020, but I couldn't find the presentation. So I had notes about Tarragon. Did they provide conceptual drawings for commercial retail on top? I just couldn't find them. Never.
No, and I can get to that too, and talk more about what we've seen so far. It's one of the last slides I have. So do you want to wait or you want me to answer that now?
I would like to wait, please. I'm just
Okay.
trying to figure out, what developers want.
I could talk about what we've been hearing and seeing from the development community.
Perfect.
So anything else on current vision? All right. So this slide shows the lots, and this was a conceptual design that was provided by makers as part of the updated vision. So you can see buildings 1 and 2 are supposed to be multifamily residential, and then you see the adjacent horizontal retail. So residential on the left and retail on the right. That was how it was envisioned. I did mark in there too, just the parcel numbers. And then you can see in the table there just how much acreage we have on the site. So just 12 acres, give or take. And then parcel 9, which you can't really see very well on this drawing, is actually designated as a park site. So it's adjacent to the retention detention facility that's out there. And you can see just a little more than an acre. I should also note that parcel 8, in order to develop parcel 8, it's going to take some significant effort. I think it will develop, but it probably won't develop in the near term. It'll probably be longer term when land values in Monroe are significantly high, and investing in the land work that needs to be done to make that parcel function. We probably won't see that for, the next development cycle. Any questions? All right. So the zoning, I thought it would be helpful for the planning commission, since zoning is one of the recommendations that the planning commission makes to the city council as part of the comprehensive plan. So the area that we're talking about is the area that is in pink and the area that is hatched. So you can see that's the North Kelsey planning area, the planned development area, and then the overlay zone. It is zoned general commercial. It currently allows 26 dwelling units per acre. And as we talked about before, the maximum height for residential is 65 feet and all of the uses is 45 feet. And again, the development community is asking whether or not we can change those heights. So that's good news for us. I think it's something that is going to be helpful. They're also asking about having more than 26 dwelling units per acre. They like to see more density in that area, not less, which again is something of a change from when we first spoke to Tarragon, going back to, I think that was 2018. So a lot has changed between 2018 and 2023.
Liz?
Just a quick question. With that airport overlay, does that limit the height that some of the developers are wanting because of that?
Great question. And you can see the airport overlay. Can you see my cursor? I don't know if you can or not. You can. Okay, good. And as soon as I say that, of course, it disappears. Here's the airport overlay right here. And so this is just at the corner of parcel 2. So we should have enough space to be able to do multi-unit residential in this area right here.
Thank you.
Yep, just avoids the height limitations. But good question, because it is a limiting factor in other areas in the community. Any questions?
Kelsey?
When you say developers, is there a buyer then, or just people inquiring?
Just people inquiring. As you can imagine, land right now for housing is at a premium, and land for multi-family housing is at even a higher premium. And so there are several different developers that have approached the city interested in this site, but we can't move forward until we amend the CC&R. So what they're looking for are what's called land entitlements. So is everything in place that would allow them to develop exactly what it is they want to build? And right now the answer to that is no. So unless they're stepping forward with retail only, and we have had some smaller box retail stores interested, but then for various different reasons, they've decided not to continue with the with purchasing sites. So the majority of the interest so far has been on multi-unit residential. Any other questions?
Jake?
Sorry, I've never known how this works. What does the process look like when a potential buyer approaches the city in terms of the city making a decision? Do they have to entertain every bid, or based on kind of the vision, they can turn down any offer as though you were a regular property owner? Is that right?
Yep, exactly right. So typically developers will come forward, they'll put together what's called a letter of intent. And basically it just spells out, in very simple language, how much they want to offer for the property, like $1 per square foot, what they're going to put as a down payment, what information they want as they're going through their due diligence period, how long the due diligence period is, what happens if they want to extend it, do they have to put more money down, do they lose any of the money if they walk away? Just kind of those same details that you would do if you were just buying a residential property, right? It's the same kind of idea, but it would be, instead of filling out, an entire agreement. They just come with something very simple to begin with. And then once both parties agree on the terms, then the attorneys get to work writing up the more complex document that kind of spells out everything. But the majority of those terms are agreed upon in the letter of intent.
And
Go ahead.
no, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, the city council does not have to approve any agreement that's brought forward. So they can look at the terms and decide, whether or not it is a development that they're interested in. So for example, we have had certain types of development where the city council has felt that that is something that we already have a lot of in Monroe and we don't need any more of it. And so our broker goes back and explains kind of, again, the city's vision, what we're hopeful for. And, that's kind of where the vision piece comes into play, right? As you're weighing the offers to sell, the offers to purchase against how does this fit in with the overall vision?
Thank you very much.
It's a great question, though. I never knew how it worked either and before I came to the city of Monroe.
And you basically touched on it, but I just want to clarify, the city council is the ultimate decider of whether to accept the bid or not.
That's right.
With all due respect to Mayor Thomas, I'm sure he's involved as well.
That's the legislative body's job, is to approve policy, budget, agreements like that. So that's, just so everybody else can hear that. The executive branch, our job is, we'll do negotiations with folks. So sometimes we'll talk with folks before we take things before the council to try to get more information about proposals and things like that. So we're part of the negotiation, but it is the council that makes the final decision. So just affirming what you said, that's a legislative body function.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Randy?
Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Because you did also mention, so it's just like any residential purchase. If a company tells us what they're going to do and we say, yeah, we like that, and then the council approves the sale, and then they could actually do anything based on the zoning though, right? I mean, they don't have to follow through with the plan that they gave you unless there's some legal agreement in the sale that says that, or they could then sell it to someone else who also doesn't follow that vision, right? So that's why what we choose for zoning is so important, because truthfully, anything under that zoning could be done on the site, no matter what they said.
And unless there's something in the agreement, to your point, that restricts a certain type of development. I think that there were some people who were surprised, for example, that the city had negotiated a sale agreement with Sabi Corporation. And it turned out that Sabi was representing, I believe, Walmart. And so there were some people that were surprised that after Sabi purchased the property, it turned out to be a Walmart store.
And maybe you're going to touch on this in later slides. So if you are, then disregard my question. But the difference between what it's currently zoned at and what what changes would need to occur to meet the vision and also meet the interest from the parties. Does the city or you have recommendations on how to get from there to where we want to be?
Well, the vision that was developed in 2018 provides for this. And I believe that this is codified in the municipal code under the development regulations. And oops, this includes, the design guidelines.
Yeah.
So this is straight out of the municipal code.
But I think what we had touched on is that this current zoning and that 2018 drawing isn't meeting the current vision for the site. And so how to get to the current vision?
What you would need to do would be a couple of things, but going back to the land use table, which I didn't include on this slide, to see what are the actual uses. And you've, as a commission, have touched on the land use table. I think you've had a couple of discussions about what's in the land use table for the promenade, for example, or for the downtown district. but you'd have to go back then into the development regulations. So keep in mind that everything has to be consistent, right? Your comprehensive plan has to be consistent, and then your development regulations have to be consistent with that plan. So I can't answer your question directly. Community Development Director Lance Bailey may have more details about what's in the development regs. I'm not that familiar with them.
Yeah, I mean, the things that are represented in those concept drawings are uses that are currently allowed in the land use matrix. The thing that I think, one of the things that Deborah is getting at is how the market has changed from when that original plan was done till today. For example, the desire by some of the housing developers to do higher density housing, like most of that is commercial, reflecting a 65-foot height limit. I don't know if anybody has actually put a number out there for the height limit that they'd like to see, but they have mentioned that they would like to see more. Like that 26 unit per acre density is not, they would like to see more in order to be able to build a larger housing project.
Right, and I'm interested in these ideas. I just need to know what they're asking the difference to be. So right now, general commercial allows that much density, but so it would need to be zoned as multifamily instead for those parcels.
The zone allows for multifamily development. As
It
well.
does for
It's-
29 dwelling units per acre.
So it's because our density does the 26 units per acre.
We're 20, our limit right now is 25, correct? And
Oh,
we have,
yes, that's right there, the 26 dwelling units per acre. So if they're want it to be more high density than that, then we're talking about definitions in the code. Not just zoning.
It's actually written out in that section of the code. There is a pullout for the North Kelsey Tierney Place overlay. I didn't copy the whole thing here, but it does talk about, there is a table that says how many dwelling units per acre in this zone. So you could go back and take a look at increasing the number of dwelling units per acre and increasing the height within this zone. I wouldn't recommend doing that separate from your work on the comprehensive plan, which I think goes into my next, oh, not quite next slide. But I think when you're looking at a zone and you're looking at what needs to be done as part of this comprehensive plan update, which is where to accommodate people and housing, looking at the North Kelsey site, I think is important, but it's also important to take a look at the surrounding properties as well, which are also commercial. And I think it would be worth taking a look at to discern whether or not additional multi-unit housing all along the US 2 corridor would make sense. So I think waiting and doing this as a big picture perspective will give you a better opportunity to decide how the community should develop going forward.
You actually get a chance to do that on Thursday evening. Because one of the things that the activities that we have, and it's also being kind of jumping ahead because I was going to talk about this, but I think the timing here is good. Is an exercise that allows you to put densities, not just for housing, but for jobs and commercial development and for housing in different parts of the city. And so that will help inform this, and sort of it creates there's a target number of housing that we're trying to get to. We're kind of sort of doing some fine tuning at the last minute, but I think it'll be an interesting opportunity to look at that, and you can look specifically at the Kelsey area for that type of density, whether it's housing, commercial, or mixed use. Which it currently allows all of those things. And as Deborah was saying, there's the table that's in the if you're ever looking in the zoning code and you want to look at the density and typically the height limits and other things. It's usually under bulk requirements. So there's a table in there and it's 26 units per acre. So we can change that. We wouldn't have to actually redefine it. We would just have to change that density. It has other implications, but that change itself is not terribly difficult to do. Policy issue, really more, the biggest question becomes, what do you want that number to be?
In that route, you're changing it for anything zoned that way, right? Not just North Kelsey area.
No, this particular section of the code is specifically North Kelsey.
Okay.
So the North Kelsey, as you can see, it's an overlay that exists on top of the general commercial zone.
Lance, I have a question about building standards and design standards. So it's been mentioned this evening that, retail, there's less retail needed, more residential needed. But if we could require, let's say we wanted, first floor commercial and all the upper floors residential, but developers, let's say commercial lease rates are half of what residential lease rates are per square foot right now, but maybe not forever. We could require in the design standards that they build it to commercial specs for the first floor and have some leeway that they could rent it for residential until such time as they become more equal or back in balance or whatever. Could we do that?
Yeah, in fact, we have that in our code, and it's when you run into it, it's like, what does that mean? It's a minimum ceiling height.
Right.
So the first floor has to be a minimum ceiling height of 12. I think it might be 15. I may be thinking of another one where it's 12, but that allows it to transition into commercial, because if you build it at a residential ceiling
You
height,
need a
it
couple feet of
doesn't,
HVAC. really.
yeah, it doesn't really work. It can work for office, but it's not going to work for like a restaurant or something like that.
So we could design it to commercial standards, even if we allow them to develop it as residential for the time being.
Right.
Okay. Other thoughts? Shake your legs.
Oh, sorry, no, I'm good.
Okay. Back to
All
you.
right, thank you. So what's next? Where are we now and where are we headed? So as I mentioned, in 2018, we retained a commercial broker, Lee and Associates, and Tiffany Connell, and they are currently working to field phone calls from interested buyers. And I mentioned earlier that we get phone calls, I don't know, 4 or 5 times a year from individuals who are companies that are interested in purchasing. Since 2019, we have been negotiating with Lowe's to amend the CC&Rs. I have to say, it has not been as easy as a negotiation as I would have hoped. And I think the current approach that we are taking has just about run its course. And so we are going to be talking to the city council about taking a different tact in order to complete those negotiations in a more timely manner. I can't provide any more details to you about those negotiations than that at this time, but know that we are working diligently to try and get those CC&Rs amended. My sense is that one of the challenges that we face is that it's really, there's no benefit to Lowe's to amend the CC&Rs. Right now, they get the benefit of having nothing out in front of them. I think one of their concerns has been the type of development that might occur adjacent to them. They've had some bad experiences with multi-unit residential and with very popular restaurants blocking their entrance and taking their parking, and then complaining about deliveries and other activities that would happen adjacent to a home improvement store. For anybody that recalls, there was some tension between Home Depot and adjacent property owners several years ago, right after the Home Depot in Snohomish was built. And so again, I think Lowe's experience is they need to be particular about who has property next to them in order to continue to operate their business in the way that they want to. So they don't see this as a priority for them, and they don't see any benefit potentially for change. So I think that's been one of the challenges that we've been faced with in trying to amend the CCNRs. We do have a few more tools, as I mentioned, in our toolbox. And so we're going to be talking about those tools with council and hopefully moving forward again here shortly. The other things I wanted to mention is, again, just the change in retail and the way that retail operates and the challenges that have kind of dogged retail stores, particularly brick and mortar stores, following the COVID-19 pandemic, because so many people switched to purchasing goods online. And so trying to continue to bring foot traffic in, into a business is not easy. And I think that's one of the benefits of having a residential unit adjacent to your retail, is because you have built-in customers. You have people that want to activate that space. That is their home. They, want to buy groceries and prepared meals, and they want entertainment. So I think overall, in the long run, focusing on multi-unit residential in this area makes a lot of sense. It's just clearing the hurdle of amending the CCNRs. I think the other thing to keep in mind, and I mentioned this as we were talking about, well, what can we do today to get the vision that we want? And I really think it's focusing in on setting those goals and policies in the comprehensive plan. So when that comprehensive plan is adopted, we can come out and work on development regulations that are really specific to that long-term vision. Some of the requests that we've had have been increasing heights. Initially, when Tarragon, who is a residential, multi-unit residential home builder, approached the city back in 2018, they could not make mixed-use development pencil for them because the cost of, for example, podium-style development, where you have concrete structure on the bottom supporting steel structure units on the top going above 5 stories, is very expensive. And in order to build that type of unit, you have to be able to earn the rents back on, each one of the living units within that building. And up until now, Monroe has not been able to achieve those rents to have that balance and that return on investment. So even when we're thinking about, well, could we put affordable housing on this site? Keep in mind that at the end of the day, there either needs to be government funding that's underwriting the return on that investment for that building, or the rents themselves, have to pay for that type of development. So the picture that you see on the bottom, with that podium style concrete with, what is that, 5 stories, 1, 2, 5 stories above, that's not cheap to build. And it's got to be able to generate, a source of revenue for the developer and for the investors. I put the picture up on the top in order to give you kind of the bird's eye view of what US 2 currently looks like and how much open space we actually have available for additional housing development, multi-unit housing development. I mean, look at the size of that parking lot in front of Safeway store. I mean, it's just huge, and it carries all the way out, across the highway. And so imagine what it would look like if we had parking on the bottom floor and, multi-unit housing, and then all of those individuals within those units being able to shop at the stores that are adjacent to where they live. So as you're thinking about, what vision the community has for the future and what that looks like in our comprehensive plan update, I these are a couple of images I think to keep in mind as you begin working on those goals and policies. Any questions?
I don't see any questions, Deborah.
Well, I hope that answers the Planning Commission's questions. It's like everything you ever wanted to know about North Kelsey that your neighbors ask you when they find out that you're on the Planning Commission. You can just pull out this PowerPoint presentation and share it with them.
Thank you. Really appreciate the presentation this evening.
You're welcome. Thank you for your time.
Okay. I know what they do. What happened? All right, we're to the next section, which is discussion by commissioners and staff. Start with commissioners on Zoom. Liz?
I don't really have much tonight, other than that was a great presentation. I appreciated knowing the history on the North Kelsey property. So thank you, Deborah, and appreciate all the added information on it. I know Turbo and I did a lot of work. God, was that 2020 when we talked with Tangram? Seems like forever ago. But yeah, it's always great to revisit and make updates and changes. So look forward to the work ahead on that. So thank you very much, everybody.
Okay. Melanie?
Nothing for me tonight. Just thank you so much for the presentation. As Commissioner Nugent said, it was great information, good update, and very helpful to have when people ask that question over and over and over again in the community. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Janelle?
I don't have much to say tonight, but I do want to thank Deborah for that amazing presentation. I am not a Monroe native, just been here since 2018. So to be able to see that timeline really helped make sense of a lot of things that I've wondered myself. So I just want to thank you for your thorough presentation tonight, and that is it.
Thanks, Janelle. Kelsey?
I don't have anything either. Thanks for being here. Thanks for the presentation. Bye.
I was just going to mention one thing for Deborah, and if you're going to seek a consultant or an attorney to help with the CC&Rs and are looking for data points, Home Depot cited a store right in the midst of basically a little north of the Alderwood Mall. So it's sandwiched in between the Alderwood Mall, Costco, a huge apartment complex. It's just completely surrounded by retail or all around a restaurant. So if the consultant was able to get data from that particular store, because their parking lot's probably half the size of a normal Home Depot or half the size of our Lowe's. If they could get some, retail data on sales that it wasn't, overly restricted by the site location in amongst all of that other development, that might be helpful, or a lobbying point to say, your sales are not going to be, limited by having additional development near you. I don't know, just a thought.
Yeah, that's actually very helpful. So thank you for sharing that. I haven't seen that Home Depot, but next time I'm in that neighborhood, I'll swing by and take a look at it and snap a few photos.
Okay. Thanks. Brandy?
Yeah, I have nothing tonight. Thank you.
I just wanted to echo, Deborah, that was an excellent presentation. That's the best I've seen yet, and I appreciate it a lot. I'm sure you put a lot of work into compiling all of the different dates and everything. So thank you again. And Mayor Thomas, appreciate you joining us as well and helping out. Always a pleasure to hear from you. And looking forward to Thursday. I recommend everyone go to that and tell your neighbor, because it's going to be an awesome way to put your toes into the comprehensive plan and hearing some community feedback. So that is all I have.
Okay. Lance?
You fired me up. I was gonna make a comment about about the Home Depot, and yeah, there's been a lot of change, I think, quickly with the big box. I mean, you're seeing projects now where they're putting multi-stories on top of big box stores for residential, and it wasn't very long ago that they, like Lowe's, they didn't want housing anywhere near them because it was the impacts and people complaining about noise. And now you've got, I mean, it's changing pretty fast. I'd be curious to see that as well. But the only thing I really wanted to mention was another call out for the meeting on Thursday, and free food at 5. If you're inclined, and then the meeting will start at 6. But there's going to be some interesting activities that I think will help to sort of help visualize some of the things that we're talking about. And there's going to be there's the survey. So as you're doing the activities, because we want to get feedback, because the activities that we're doing in person, we're trying to utilize the survey to do very similar things. And so I've practiced around with it. And so anything that would be easier for people that maybe aren't as used to using computers, because you're thinking, you're just kind of putting blobs down and stuff, which might be a little bit confusing to some folks, but I think it'll be interesting.
Good. Randy, you want to jump in?
Yeah, sorry, I did have something now. So do we have to notify if we're all gonna go? So it's like not a quorum, one thing for the Open Public Meetings Act, and the second, age bracket of people for youth. Is there like teenagers, do you think would be able to participate? Anything younger than that? What do you think?
Any ages, I certainly teenagers. I mean, some of I don't know. That's a good question. I had not thought of that. For real young kids, it might be a little much.
Yeah, but like, preteen or teenagers maybe,
But
and they
yeah,
can
I
always
mean,
opt
and
out. if it's
that
not.
would be great. The more folks that we had of that age that are there.
Mayor Thomas, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I was just, okay, so when you asked the question, I didn't think about a 5-year-old playing with Legos, and all of a sudden we have a huge node right in the middle of Lake Ty that we need to fill. I would encourage younger folks to be involved. You all do realize that you're not planning for yourselves, right? You're planning for the future. And so we need to have people that are in their teens there too. So I don't know what that means in terms of collecting data and everything. It would almost be fun if there were an extra table for the 5-year-olds to be able to play with the Legos. But I think that's something that staff probably would want to monitor if they have somebody that's just throwing stuff down on a table versus, being thoughtful with a parent versus being a teenager. So that was a really good question. I do encourage younger folks to be involved in this though. Thank you.
I did want to, and Hannah, correct me if I'm wrong on this, in your question about the meeting, it's my understanding that the clerk is advertising this as a meeting for city council, planning commission. I'm not sure who else. So I don't believe, everybody is welcome to attend because we're going to advertise them that way. I did also want to mention that we're going to have an on-site translator for Spanish speaking community. So we're hoping that is, we're doing all of our notices in English and Spanish, and hopefully folks have you gotten the postcards?
Yeah, I want to thank city staff for getting that out so quickly, because I think it was planning commissioners, that had that idea. I don't know if it was in the works to get it done that before.
That's where it came from.
Yeah, so yeah. So that was fast. So excellent. It was in both English and Spanish and in your mail. So perfect.
But you haven't gotten yours yet?
Well, I do now have 2 addresses, so maybe I should check.
Liz?
I forgot, does the same hold true for the Blueberry Children's Park Playground renovation open house? As I hold up my same postcard, which is awesome. Because if I also don't want to create a quorum for that one as well, but I really want to go to that one on April 20th at 7 o'clock at the City Hall.
I don't know, but I'll find out and let you know.
Okay.
I'll find out. from
I
clerk.
emailed Kate on both of them because I also did not want to create a quorum. I was concerned about that. I emailed her earlier tonight, so thank you.
She is out of town on vacation.
Oh, good for her.
Yes, good for her.
She's not gonna be there on Thursday?
No, she's not. It's a lot of work setting this up but there will be other activities. So she will not be left out.
You'll be there, Linus.
I will be there as well as a lot of other staff. This is for the free food.
Yeah, what is it?
We got pizza and
No name.
no names. Like, it's not a meeting, in Monroe unless they have no names in it.
So I'm bringing my cargo pants because I get stuffed. in. No names.
Lots
are
in your
Easy to
pockets.
conceal and walk around with, yeah. Melanie,
So, obviously, this question was answered in terms of input, but in terms of community involvement, is the meeting kind of family friendly or not really? On Thursday?
I think it would depend on the age, and I'm just trying to think, the activities. I mean, it's gonna be not super long, but it's, a couple of hours of time. And, the activities will be looking at maps and putting densities and other things like transportation network. So it's probably a little more a little complicated for someone that's. I don't have kids, so I struggle to think about what that, suitable for what age, on the edge of the box, but probably a little bit much for a 5-year-old, I'm guessing. Teenagers, I think it would be great. I don't know where that cutoff would be.
Mayor Thomas?
Yeah, Commissioner, could I just get clarification? Is your question whether or not it would be okay to bring kids to this?
We're working on that.
Yes, that's kind of the bigger question.
Yeah, I don't, there shouldn't be an issue with you bringing your children to this. Whether or not they're going to have Legos to, build where they want the homes to go in 20 years in Monroe, that probably won't be the case. But that my hope would be that just like any other meeting that has some participation associated with it, that if you needed to bring your kids, you should be able to do that. So Lance, would you disagree with that? I mean, you should be able to bring your kids to these.
Yeah.
It's just it's just a matter of whether or not there's going to be something for them to do, that we would be providing. So the answer is yes, you should be able to bring your kids.
Yeah, that's part of getting the community there without having to pay for childcare. Go ahead, Janelle.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I will have all 8 of mine there. No, I did want to say, I don't know if it has been done. I know it's kind of last minute, but with everyone saying that, it would be good to have the younger voice input. I don't know if it was shared with the school district for them to push out to their families. I did get my postcard in the mail, so glad about that. But I don't know, maybe I think I saw something on Facebook too, but maybe just, I don't know if we can send an email to the school board and they can put it out to their principals. And if the principals want to blast it to their families, just to get more of the younger voice. And, wherever there's food, there's young people. So I don't know if you're going to plan for that much food, but, just saying,
I'll
Just an
I'll send them an email because we've had a contact that we've been working on with the logistics for that. And
perfect.
we'll mention that to them. Maybe they already did that. I don't know,
Okay.
but I'll double check.
Awesome.
That's a great suggestion. Thank you.
Okay, great. Awesome. Hannah, what do you have for us?
I don't really have much. A notice of potential quorum has been put out for Thursday's meeting, so you guys can all be there. You're more than welcome. Liz, I'll look into the one for the Blueberry Children's Park. Thank you for catching that. Otherwise, this upcoming Saturday, we have the VFW Veteran Grave Cleanup up at the Oddfellow Cemetery on Old Owen. We'll be there starting around 9 a.m. So everyone is welcome, all ages.
Great,
Thanks, guys.
thank you. Okay, Melanie, would you care to move for adjournment? Huh?
I move that we adjourn the meeting.
Have a second?
Second the motion.
Second from Janelle. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Opposed?
Nay. I thought last time we said we didn't need a unanimous vote. I was just doing it for the record. All right, never mind.
Cut the mic, cut the mic.
Carlson.
I just wanted any dissent on that particular motion.
I swear I asked you that last time, Jay. I said, can I?
Try it and see what happens.
Always. We don't need another vote. Mayor, can you comment on that?
Thanks, everyone. Very, very happy to have all of you here tonight. Thank you. Thanks, Mayor Thomas. Appreciate you being here, sir.
Yeah, thank you all. You're doing a great job. Keep it up. Thank you.